Do the Warriors have enough stamina to get to the end of the finish line, wherever that is? I think the Warriors have the ability to win a series. Anything beyond that, to me, is going to be very difficult to do. And it's because I think that they're eventually going to run into a wall, the same way they ran into a wall tonight against a Spurs team that they had no business losing to. Just a stunning, awful, unbelievably bad loss for the Golden State Warriors tonight as they fall 114-111 to the San Antonio Spurs. You heard it from Tim Roy, voice of your Golden State Warriors. The hero for San Antonio and the one who threw the dagger into the hearts of the Dubs is none other than the familiar face, Harrison Barnes. I mean, what a shot he made from 27 feet away, fading over Jimmy Butler with 3.1 seconds left to deliver victory to the Spurs and to snatch potential victory from the Golden State Warriors in a game that, simply put, they had to win. This was a game they had to win to essentially give themselves the inside track to get out of the play-in. Now, that is not certain. Now, it isn't out of the realm of possibility as the Golden State Warriors fall, again, by 3 points. They are now sitting, as things stand, in 7th place. They are 47-33. If the season ended today, the Golden State Warriors would be playing in the first play-in game against the Minnesota Timberwolves for the right to go play the Houston Rockets. And if they lost, obviously they would play the winner of the Kings and the Mavericks for the right to go play the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the good news for Golden State before we get to all the crazy things that happened down the stretch. And oh, by the way, you are listening to Warriors Wrap Up here on 95.7 The Game, live from Splash at Thrive City. My name is Evan Giddings, and the phone number is 888-957-9570. If you'd like to call in, tell us what you're feeling right now. If you were at the game, if you were watching the game, what your takeaway is from this loss, that after a 22-6 run over the last 28 games with Jimmy Butler, it feels like a lot of that progress that they made was potentially thrown down the drain after losing to a Spurs team that at the end of March you beat by 42 points on the road. And, look, this is an awful loss for many reasons, but first and foremost, it's because it drops you back into the play-in. Now, again, the good news for the Dubs is that the way things shake out is Memphis has a very tough schedule starting tomorrow. I believe they get Denver, Houston, and I believe it's the Clippers. I got to check real fast on Memphis's final 3 games. But essentially, if they lose one of their last 3, and the Golden State Warriors, Minnesota is that third opponent for Memphis. Minnesota, Denver, and then Dallas. Those are the teams that they play heading into the postseason. If they lose one of those games and the Warriors win out, so they win on Friday against Portland, and then they beat, arguably, a tough Clippers team on Sunday, the Warriors would have the tiebreaker over Memphis and get out of the play-in having the 6th seed. I think that is of the utmost importance right now, considering what I believe to be the downfall tonight for Golden State. And yes, it was turnovers. Yes, 0 of 7 on 3-point shots in the fourth quarter. Yes, stupid mistakes that they made time and time again. The non-Curry minutes, maybe not having post tonight, or Gary Payton II hurt them. But they got outscored by nearly 20 points in the non-Steph minutes at the beginning of the second quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter. A 19-3 run for the Spurs at the beginning of the second got them back into this game. And then out of halftime, a 12-point lead going into the fourth quarter essentially evaporated after a 15-4 start for the San Antonio Spurs. Both of those large stretches was when Steph Curry was off the floor. So we can talk about all of these things, but to me, this simply comes down to the Warriors broke down. Fatigue after 6 games in 10 days for an older team, for a team that has been playing, by their words, playoff basketball since they acquired Jimmy Butler officially on February 8th. To me, this was a game in which they just broke down. They did not have enough left in the tank to finish the San Antonio Spurs off. And that's why, even though this loss does not mark the end of their season, it was a loss that I did not foresee. I did think this was going to be a tough game. For those who listened to Warriors Live pregame I told you this was not going to be an easy game for the Warriors, and the reason was because of that last stat. 6 games in 10 days. And San Antonio is a team that has a lot of players that, number one, would like to stick it to Golden State, but also still have stuff to play for. Stephon Castle, we found out, was, and still is, a dude. Harrison Barnes obviously hit the biggest shot of the game. Chris Paul was sensational in this basketball game, specifically in the first half when he was a perfect 4 of 4 and had 12 points. He was jawing with pods. I thought he got the best of them for most of this game. He was talking to the Warriors bench, going to the locker room at halftime, even though they were trailing at that point. The Spurs were by 4, 55-51. Like, this was a game where the Spurs just simply did not roll over the way the Phoenix Suns did last night. And it was almost as if the Warriors just expected the Spurs, who at this point in the season have nothing to play for, they're eliminated, to just wilt. But that's not what happened. And I thought the Warriors, specifically Draymond Green, and to some extent Steph, but I think more so the rest of the team, Draymond Green specifically, I thought, got worn down in this game, and he ran out of steam. And as evident by 2 boneheaded turnovers in the fourth quarter, got scored on twice by Keldon Johnson, and the Warriors nearly got bailed out by a couple of dumb fouls committed by the Spurs, specifically by the guy who hit the game-winning shot, Harrison Barnes. Keldon Johnson scores with seconds left in the game, 32.6 over Draymond, and the Warriors are bringing up the court, and Harrison Barnes, inexplicably, with 3 seconds left in the game, fouls Draymond Green, who then goes to the free throw line, and to his credit, made 2 very clutch free throws to tie the game at 111 before Harrison Barnes obviously delivered the dagger. But this was a game that I do not think the Warriors deserved to win. I'm not sure if it was a game in which they felt like they played better than the Spurs tonight. I mean, overall, the Spurs just hung around, basically, and the Warriors, I thought they gave them this game. I thought this was a game that the Warriors should have won, but because of lackadaisical play, I think because of their settling, they were actually outscored in this game in the paint. And that, to me, is the sign of a team who now is not as good of a three-point shooting team with Jimmy Butler on it, who is tired on the 6th game in 10 nights, and took a lot of three-pointers. There was a stretch at the beginning of this basketball game in which the Warriors took 22 three-pointers in the first 18 minutes. And that's typically what good teams will do against bad teams that they do not care to play with effort against. I thought that the Warriors came out defensively focused, but offensively they were lazy at the beginning of this game. They assumed that when they went up 9-0, and then I think it was 11-3, that the Spurs, like the Suns last night, were just going to go away. And they didn't. They came out and they continued to fire to the point where it was only an 8-point game at the end of the first. And then the Spurs at the beginning of the second quarter took it to the inside against Golden State, whether Draymond Green was on the floor or not, and the Warriors just had no answers offensively. I realized they scored 111 points in this game, but I thought that offensively they left a lot on the table, and it's why a couple of my predictions came true in this game. But the one that I was firm on, our Fremont Bank take it to the bank prediction, I did not think the Warriors are going to eclipse 125.5 points. That was the prediction that I went with tonight because I just felt like the Warriors were going to have to do it with their defense, and obviously the Spurs took advantage of it in both the second and fourth quarters. And that, to me, is the sign, for the second time this season, mind you, the Spurs in the fourth quarter have come from behind against the Warriors. Remember, it was the beginning of the end of the 12-3 start for Golden State all the way back in November. No Jonathan Kuminga that night, but the Warriors got outscored, I believe it was by 15 or more points. They scored 13 points in the fourth quarter against the Spurs, and they got eaten up. It was a game that everyone threw away and said, oh, it doesn't make a difference, not that big of a deal. And then they went on to lose a lot of basketball games, and it showed some of the flaws of the Warriors. I'm not sure if this game is one that highlights every single flaw of this team, but to me, the most important, and I've iterated this multiple times, whether it's on Warriors Wrap-Up, whether it's on Warriors This Week every single Saturday morning with my guy Dan Devone, the thing that is going to get the Warriors beat, whether it's in the regular season or in the postseason or potentially the play-in now, it's the fact that they have been playing and grinding away for so long that the fatigue and the stamina is eventually going to fade. To me, when they had that, I think they were a game below 500 when they got Jimmy, and they started to win a lot of games. And I'm looking at this schedule, and it wasn't necessarily treacherous, but if you're pushing yourself to the limit each and every night, like Kerr has talked about this team being willing to do and necessarily needing to do in order to get to the playoffs and, more importantly, get out of the play-in, well, then what are you going to have left when you get to the playoffs? What are you going to have left in a 7-game series when you're going every other game? Obviously, this was a back-to-back. Obviously, they've had 2 back-to-backs in less than 2 weeks. But the point remains, when the Warriors players, particularly their older players, have been worn down, they make mistakes in crunch time. One thing that stuck with me quite a bit is the fact that Kerr, when he gave Steph Curry a game off, this was back before the road trip, and I forget which game it was specifically. It might have been against Portland on March 10th. He talked about that game being one where Curry needed an emotional rest day, essentially. He needed that game off. Or pardon me, it was later actually against Milwaukee when the Warriors beat the Bucks. He needed that game off because when he gets tired, when he gets fatigued, he makes mistakes. And I thought that Curry was really good tonight, but that's something that actually I thought about in reference to Draymond Green, because he made a lot of mistakes down the stretch of the game, and it wasn't like he couldn't, he's not going to be able to make some of those plays. I think specifically on defense, he just didn't have it. He didn't have anything left in the tank, and I think it's because he's been taxed again and again, time and time again during this stretch in which the Warriors, to their credit, have had some really impressive victories. Again, they beat Milwaukee. They've beaten New York twice. They've beaten Denver, the Lakers, Memphis. They've gotten a lot of big wins, especially recently, but that has taken a lot out of them. And I think the ramification of that is being susceptible to a game against a team like the Spurs, where if they hit a couple of big shots, they might beat you. And so in regards to the Warriors, championship aspirations, or the players and their I don't think it's a referendum on individual players, but to me, again, it highlights the lone, and really not the lone, but the biggest weakness, which has a trickle-down effect towards everything else that we're going to discuss in this game. But it's, do the Warriors have enough stamina to get to the end of the finish line, wherever that is? If it's in the postseason, is it the first round? Is it the second round? Could it be the Western Conference? Beyond, wherever people are putting them. On our station, we have a lot of different expectations for this team. I think the Warriors have the ability to win a series. Anything beyond that, to me, is going to be very difficult to do. And it's because I think that they're eventually going to run into a wall, the same way they ran into a wall tonight against a Spurs team that they had no business losing to.